My daughter's engagement party, everyone was celebrating her upcoming wedding to a financial advisor. But right in the middle of the celebration, she suddenly pulled me aside and whispered, "Dad, investigate him." 4 words. No explanation. My heart sank as I realized I'd been betrayed by the man I was about to call my son-in-law. I kept smiling politely at the guests, but my hands were already quietly activating a plan of destruction. Welcome. Before we begin, drop a comment telling us where you're joining from. We love hearing from our global audience. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. A quick reminder, this narrative blends fictional elements for entertainment and learning purposes. Any similarities to actual names or places are unintentional, though the lessons here hold genuine value for you. I sit in the garden where Kate used to spend her Sunday mornings, a blanket across her lap and a paperback in her hands. The chair is gone now. I gave it away 2 years after she left us, but the view remains unchanged. Rows of grapevines stretch toward the western hills, their leaves turning copper in the late afternoon light. Willamette Valley in autumn has a way of making you believe the world is at peace, even when your own world has quietly shattered. My name is Graham Fletcher. I am 66 years old, and for 38 years I built a career in investment banking that most people would call successful. I worked for firms in New York, San Francisco, and eventually Portland, analyzing deals worth hundreds of millions, advising clients who trusted me with their legacies. I learned to read balance sheets the way some people read novels, finding stories hidden in the numbers. I learned to trust data, to verify assumptions, to never sign anything without asking 3 more questions. But data cannot prepare you for the moment your wife collapses in the kitchen on a Tuesday morning in November. Kate passed away 5 years ago. The doctors called it a ruptured brain aneurysm. She had been making coffee. I was upstairs reading the news. When I came down, she was on the floor, her hand still reaching toward the counter. The paramedics arrived within 7 minutes. It made no difference. She was 61 years old, and she was gone before I could say goodbye. We had been married for 34 years. We raised one daughter, Claire, who was 28 at the time, and working as a healthcare administrator in Portland. Claire is independent, careful, slow to trust. She inherited that caution from both of us, though I suspect she learned it more from watching Kate than from listening to me. Kate had a gift for seeing people clearly. She never said much, but when she spoke, you listened. The hospital gave us a few hours with her before they asked us to make arrangements. Claire sat beside the bed, holding her mother's hand, unable to cry. I stood by the window, staring at the parking lot below, feeling like the floor had disappeared beneath me. A nurse brought us tea. I do not remember drinking it. Before Kate passed, she had been awake for maybe 10 minutes. The doctors said it was a miracle. I call it a gift. She looked at me, her voice so faint, I had to lean close, and she made me promise 2 things. The first promise was simple. Stop working 7 days a week. Spend time at the house. Take care of the garden. Live a little. I nodded. I promised. The second promise was harder to understand. She said, trust but verify. Always verify. Especially with Claire. I thought she was talking about work. I thought she meant the old banker's rule, the discipline I had spent decades teaching junior analysts. Trust your team, but verify the numbers. Trust the client's intentions, but verify their balance sheet. It made sense to me. I squeezed her hand and promised I would. 3 hours later, she was gone. In the months that followed, I kept the first promise. I stepped back from the firm, took a semi-retirement package, and moved full-time to the estate Kate and I had bought in Willamette Valley a decade earlier. The house sits on 11 acres, surrounded by vineyards and old oak trees. It was supposed to be our retirement dream. Instead, it became the place where I learned to live alone. Claire visited often in the beginning. She helped me sort through Kate's things, pack up her clothes, organize the files Kate had kept in the small office off the kitchen. We did not talk much. Grief does not always need words. But I could see the weight she carried, the way she moved carefully through the house, as if afraid to disturb something. She was stronger than I expected, but she was also 28, and suddenly without the mother who had always been her compass. For a long time, I did not understand the second promise. Trust, but verify. Especially with Claire. I thought maybe Kate had been worried about Claire's career, her decisions, her independence, but that did not fit. Kate trusted Claire completely. She always had. It was not until 3 years later in March of 2023 that I began to suspect Kate had seen something I could not. Claire called me one evening from Portland. She was 32 by then, focused on her work, cautious about relationships, after a few disappointments in her 20s. But that night her voice was different, lighter, hopeful. She told me she had met someone. His name was Nathan Cross. He was 42, worked in private equity consulting, and they had connected at a charity gala in Portland. She said he was thoughtful, articulate, and patient. She said he reminded her of me. I told her I was happy for her, and I was. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I heard Kate's voice again. Trust, but verify. Especially with Claire. Over the next 18 months, I watched as Nathan became part of Claire's life. I met him several times. He was polite, well-dressed, quick with a smile. He asked good questions about the estate, about my career, about the Fletcher family trust that Kate and I had established years ago to secure Claire's future. He seemed genuinely interested. I wanted to like him. I tried to like him. But something about him felt rehearsed. The way he spoke, the way he answered questions, the way he never seemed surprised by anything. It reminded me of junior analysts pitching deals they had memorized but not fully understood. Smooth on the surface, empty underneath. Still, I said nothing. Claire was happy. She deserved that. I told myself I was being overprotective, cynical, too old to recognize genuine affection when I saw it. I thought I understood Kate's words. Trust in business, verify the data. I was wrong. She meant something deeper, something I would not fully grasp until the evening of the engagement party, when my daughter leaned close and whispered 4 words that changed everything. 18 months before the engagement party, my phone rang on a Tuesday evening in March while I was reviewing quarterly reports. Claire's name appeared on the screen. She rarely called during the week unless something was urgent. "Dad," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. I met someone. I set down my pen and leaned back. For 3 years since Kate had been gone, Claire had focused entirely on her career managing a healthcare administration team at a hospital in Portland. She worked long hours and avoided discussing relationships. I had worried she was burying herself in work the same way I once had. But now her voice carried a lightness I had not heard in years. "Tell me about him," I said. His name was Nathan Cross, 42 years old. He worked as a private equity consultant, advising firms on acquisitions and deal structuring. They had met 2 weeks earlier at a charity gala in Seattle. He approached her during the silent auction, made a joke about overpriced wine, and they spent the next hour talking by the windows overlooking Elliott Bay. "He made me feel like I mattered," Claire said quietly. Like he was actually listening. I recognized that tone. It was the same tone Kate had used 35 years ago when she told her father about the investment banker she had met at a college fundraiser. Hopeful, careful, ready to believe in something good. I'm happy for you." I told her, and I meant it. But even as I spoke, I felt a faint echo of Kate's voice in the back of my mind. Trust, but verify. Especially with Claire. Over the next 3 months, Claire and Nathan saw each other as often as their schedules allowed. He lived in Seattle, traveling frequently for consulting work. She drove up on weekends. He sent flowers to her office and called her every evening, even from airports and hotel lobbies. She told me he was thoughtful, patient, never rushed her. I listened and asked careful questions. Where did he grow up? What firm did he work for? Had he ever been married? Claire said he grew up somewhere on the East Coast, moved west 15 years ago to build his career. He worked independently, now advising small and mid-sized firms. And no, he had never been married. He said he had been waiting for the right person. That last detail bothered me more than I wanted to admit. A man in his early 40s, financially stable, well-spoken, never married. In my experience, that usually meant one of three things. He was too focused on his career to commit. He had commitment issues no one had been able to fix. Or he was hiding something. But I kept those thoughts to myself. Claire was 32 years old. She did not need her father questioning every choice she made. And perhaps I was simply projecting. I had spent 38 years analyzing risk for a living. It was hard to turn off that instinct even when it came to my own daughter's happiness. Still, I found myself thinking about a rule I used to teach junior analysts. When a deal looks too good to be true, it usually is. When every number lines up perfectly, when the client has an answer for every question, when there are no visible risks, that is when you dig deeper. Perfection in business is almost always a performance. But this was not business. This was Claire's life. And she deserved the chance to be happy. In late May, she called again. Her voice was steadier this time. Nathan wanted to meet me. She said it mattered to him, that he understood family was important to her, that he wanted to do things the right way. I agreed immediately and suggested he come to the estate for dinner. The following Saturday, I spent the morning preparing. I walked through the vineyard, checked the guest house, set the table on the back terrace where Kate and I used to host dinners for clients and friends. The weather cooperated. The sky was clear, the hills green, the air warm. It was the kind of afternoon that made you believe the world was generous. Claire arrived first, driving down from Portland in the late morning. She helped me set out glasses and napkins, arranged a bowl of fruit, moved through the house with the ease of someone who had grown up there. She seemed lighter than she had in years. Hopeful. I wanted that for her. Nathan arrived just after noon, driving a modest sedan, carrying a bottle of wine that was neither too expensive nor too cheap. He stepped out of the car, smiled, extended his hand, and introduced himself with the kind of confidence that comes from years of meeting strangers and making them feel comfortable. "Mr. Fletcher," he said, "thank you for having me. Claire talks about this place constantly." He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with dark hair starting to gray at the temples. He wore khakis and a button-down shirt, no tie, polished shoes. His handshake was firm, but not aggressive. His eyes were steady. He looked exactly like the kind of man you would trust with your daughter. We walked the property before lunch. He asked about the vineyard, about the history of the estate, about my years in investment banking. He listened carefully to every answer, asked follow-up questions, made thoughtful observations. He mentioned a few deals his firm had worked on, nothing flashy, just enough to establish credibility. He was articulate, polished, measured in every word. Claire watched him, the way people watch something fragile and precious, something they are afraid might disappear if they look away. I watched him the way I used to watch junior analysts pitching deals, and what I saw troubled me. He never hesitated. He never searched for a word. He never contradicted himself. Every answer fit perfectly with the previous one. It was smooth, too smooth. But I said nothing. We sat on the terrace, ate lunch, drank the wine he had brought. Claire laughed at his stories. He complimented the estate, the food, the view. He thanked me for my time. He promised to take care of Claire, to respect her, to honor what mattered to her. Nathan Cross came to my estate on a Saturday afternoon in June, driving a modest car, carrying a bottle of wine priced just right. He was perfect in every way. That should have been the first warning. I learned early in my career that the most dangerous person in any negotiation is the one who makes you feel like the smartest person in the room. They ask the right questions. They nod at the right moments. They never challenge you directly. And by the time you realize they have been managing you, the deal is already signed. By November, Nathan had been part of Claire's life for 8 months. They spent weekends together, talked every evening, made plans for holidays. She was happier than I had seen her in years. He was attentive, thoughtful, consistent. Everything a father could hope for in a partner for his daughter. But something about him still unsettled me. He came to the estate again in mid-November, this time for a more formal dinner. Claire had asked if she could bring him for the weekend, and I agreed. I wanted to give him another chance. I wanted to quiet the banker's instinct that kept whispering warnings in the back of my mind. He arrived on a Friday evening, driving the same modest sedan, carrying a bottle of wine slightly better than the one he had brought in June. He greeted me warmly, shook my hand. With the same firm grip, looked me directly in the eye. He was polished, without being flashy. Confident, without being arrogant. The kind of man you would trust immediately. We sat on the back terrace as the sun dropped behind the hills. Claire poured wine. Nathan asked about the vineyard, about the weather, about whether I had considered expanding the acreage. He listened to every answer, made thoughtful comments, never interrupted. It was textbook relationship building. I had taught junior analysts the same techniques for years. Over dinner, the conversation turned to work. He asked about my years in investment banking, about the kinds of deals I had worked on, about the difference between New York and West Coast finance culture. I answered carefully, watching him as I spoke. He nodded at the right moments, asked follow-up questions that showed he understood the subject without claiming too much expertise. Then he began talking about private equity. He explained how his consulting work involved advising firms on acquisitions, helping them evaluate target companies, structure deals, negotiate terms. He used the right vocabulary. He referenced trends in the market. He knew enough to sound credible without going deep enough to be tested. It reminded me of junior analysts pitching to clients. They memorized the deck, rehearsed the talking points, delivered everything smoothly. But if you asked a question that went one layer deeper, they stumbled. Nathan never stumbled, but he also never went deeper on his own. He stayed in safe territory, speaking in generalities, deflecting anything too specific with charm and redirection. Claire watched him the way people watch something they have decided to believe in. She smiled when he made jokes. She touched his arm when he complimented the meal. She was invested, and I understood why. He was everything she had been looking for. Stable, attentive, present. But presence can be performed. Halfway through dinner, Nathan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, apologized, and excused himself to take the call. He stepped off the terrace and walked toward the edge of the vineyard, his back to us, his phone pressed to his ear. I watched him through the window. His posture changed. His shoulders tensed. His free hand gestured sharply, cutting through the air in a way that suggested frustration or impatience. His voice was low, but I could hear the edge in it even from a distance. This was not the calm, measured Nathan who had been sitting at my table moments earlier. Then he turned slightly and saw me watching. His posture shifted immediately. His shoulders relaxed. His hand dropped. His voice softened. He ended the call within seconds, slipped the phone into his pocket, and walked back to the terrace with the same easy smile he had worn all evening. "Sorry about that," he said, sitting down. "A client on the East Coast. They forget about the time difference." Claire accepted the explanation without question. I nodded and said nothing. But I filed the moment away. It was the first time I had seen a crack in the performance. After dinner, we moved to the living room. Nathan and Claire sat together on the couch, her hand resting on his knee, his arm draped casually across her shoulders. They looked comfortable, natural, happy. I excused myself to refill my glass, and when I returned, Claire asked the question I had been dreading. "So, Dad," she said, her voice careful, "what do you think?" I looked at her. I looked at Nathan. I thought about the phone call, about the rehearsed answers, about the way he had managed every moment of the evening without ever letting his guard slip. I thought about Kate's voice in my head. Trust, but verify, especially with Claire. But I also thought about the way Claire was looking at me, hopeful and vulnerable, asking for my approval because it mattered to her. And I thought about how easy it would be to ruin this for her with a single careless word. "I think if you're happy, I'm happy," I said. She smiled. Nathan thanked me. The evening continued. Later, after they had gone to bed in the guest house, I sat alone in the library. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and settled into the chair by the window, the one that had been Kate's favorite. The house was quiet. The vineyard stretched out in the darkness beyond the glass. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was projecting 38 years of professional skepticism onto a situation that did not warrant it. I told myself that Claire was an intelligent, capable woman who deserved the chance to make her own choices without her father second-guessing every detail. I told myself that my unease was nothing more than the instinct of a man trained to look for holes in every deal even when there were none. I told myself Claire deserved happiness, and I should trust her judgment. I lied to myself like that for the next 14 months. Not one word of it was true. They dated 16 months before Nathan proposed. 16 months during which he did everything exactly right. That alone should have told me everything. In September, 6 months after they began seeing each other, Nathan introduced Claire to his parents. Robert and Susan Cross drove up from California, he said, to meet the woman their son had been talking about for months. They arrived at the estate on a Saturday afternoon, driving a well-maintained SUV, dressed in comfortable clothes that suggested retirement without wealth. Robert was a retired civil engineer. Susan had taught elementary school for 30 years. They were warm, polite, easy to talk to. We had lunch on the terrace. They told stories about Nathan as a child, about family vacations to national parks, about his high school debate team, about the summer he spent volunteering at a community center in San Diego. The stories were detailed, affectionate, completely believable. Susan laughed at the right moments. Robert offered fatherly advice about maintaining old houses. They complimented the estate, thanked me for my hospitality, and hugged Claire goodbye with genuine warmth. Everything they said was exactly right. It felt like watching actors deliver lines they had rehearsed until the performance became flawless. But I pushed the thought away. Not everyone spent their lives analyzing risk and searching for hidden motives. Some people were simply kind. Some families were simply functional. I told myself I was projecting that years of reviewing contracts and questioning assumptions had made me cynical in ways that did not serve me outside of work. Claire was radiant that afternoon. She had wanted Nathan's parents to like me, and they had. She had wanted me to like them, and I did, or at least I wanted to. After they left, she hugged me in the driveway and said, "Thank you, Dad. This means everything." I held her and said nothing. What was I supposed to say? That something felt rehearsed. That people who had just met me should not know exactly how to make me comfortable. That perfection in any relationship usually meant someone was performing. Over the next 8 months, Nathan became a regular presence at the estate. He visited most weekends, helped with small projects around the vineyard, joined me for walks through the rows of vines. He asked thoughtful questions about irrigation, about harvest schedules, about the history of the land. He never overstayed his welcome. He never made demands. He was the kind of guest you genuinely enjoyed having around. But his phone behavior continued to bother me. He took calls in the far corner of the vineyard, his back turned, his voice low. If I approached, he ended the conversation quickly and slipped the phone into his pocket. When he set it down on the table, the screen was always face down. When it buzzed during dinner, he glanced at it and ignored it. But I saw the way his jaw tightened, the way his fingers drummed against his leg. In business, those were warning signs. Secretive phone behavior meant hidden investors, undisclosed debts, relationships that would complicate a deal. But this was not business. And perhaps I was simply paranoid, reading danger into ordinary privacy. Maybe Nathan was managing difficult clients. Maybe he was protecting Claire from work stress. Maybe I was seeing shadows because I had spent too many years looking for them. In May, 14 months after they met, Nathan proposed. He took Claire to a restaurant overlooking Puget Sound, arranged for a table by the windows, and asked her to marry him as the sun set over the water. She called me from the parking lot, breathless and crying, her voice trembling with happiness. "Dad," she said, "he proposed. We're getting married." I sat down in the library, the phone pressed to my ear, and felt a complicated mix of emotions I could not untangle. Joy because Claire was happy. Relief because she had found someone who made her feel safe. And beneath it all, a quiet, persistent unease I could not name. "I'm so happy for you," I told her. And I was. That was not a lie. They began planning immediately. Claire wanted a winter wedding, something intimate but elegant, maybe 70 or 80 guests. They settled on mid-December, 10 weeks after the engagement party. The engagement party itself would be in early September, hosted at the estate, a chance for both families and close friends to celebrate before the formal ceremony. Claire threw herself into the planning with the same focus she brought to everything. She hired a coordinator, booked a venue for the wedding, ordered invitations, compiled guest lists. Nathan supported her in every decision, deferred to her preferences, paid for expenses without hesitation. He was once again exactly what she needed. The weekend before the engagement party, Nathan stayed at the estate to help with final preparations. We set up tables in the garden, arranged chairs, tested the sound system for the toasts. Claire was in Portland, managing last-minute details with the caterer. It was just the two of us working in the late afternoon heat. I went inside to refill our water bottles. As I walked back through the hall, I heard Nathan's voice drifting from the terrace. He was on the phone, standing near the edge of the vineyard, his posture tense. "I already told you," he said, his voice sharp. "After the party. We finalize everything then. Just be patient." I stopped in the doorway, listening. "The timeline hasn't changed," Nathan continued. 10 weeks. That's what we agreed. Everything moves after the signatures. No mistakes." I stepped onto the terrace. Nathan turned, saw me, and ended the call immediately. His expression shifted, the tension dissolving into an easy smile. "Client trouble," I asked, handing him a bottle of water. "Always," he said lightly. "Someone panicking over a deal that's already locked in. You know how it is." I nodded. I did know. But I also knew the difference between a client call and something else. And what I had just heard sounded nothing like a consultant managing an anxious investor. The engagement party would begin in 6 hours. 65 guests would arrive to celebrate my daughter's future with a man I could not prove was anything other than what he appeared to be. I had only one thing: a feeling. The same instinct that had guided me through 38 years of high-stakes negotiations. The same quiet warning that had kept me from signing bad deals and trusting the wrong people. The feeling that someone was hiding an enormous risk. On a September evening, the Willamette Valley estate flooded with light. Guests moved through the garden, laughter rising beneath a sky the color of burnished copper. Strings of Edison bulbs hung between the oak trees, casting warm shadows across tables covered in white linen. The air smelled of roasted vegetables, fresh bread, and wine from vineyards just beyond the hill. By 8 o'clock, the party had reached its peak. 65 people filled the garden, glasses in hand, voices layered into a hum of celebration. Nathan stood near the center of it all, his arm around Claire's waist, smiling at a cluster of her colleagues from the hospital. He looked confident, at ease, like a man who had already won. I watched from the edge of the terrace, nursing a glass of wine I had barely touched. The guest list was a mixture of people I knew well and people I had never met. Claire's friends and co-workers, a few of my old colleagues from the firm. Nathan's so-called friends, men and women he introduced as consultants, former classmates, business contacts. They looked polished, articulate, credible. Later, I would learn almost none of them were real. But that evening, I knew only what I could see. A party in full swing. My daughter smiling beside the man she intended to marry. A future unfolding exactly as she had hoped. Then Claire broke away from Nathan. She moved through the crowd with practiced ease, stopping to hug a neighbor, laugh at a joke, refill a glass. No one paid attention to where she was going. No one noticed when she reached me near the stone wall at the back of the garden. She wrapped her hand around my arm, her grip tight enough to leave a mark. She leaned close, her voice barely above a whisper, her lips near my ear. "Dad, investigate him." 4 words, chosen with absolute precision. No explanation, no context. Just a command delivered in a tone that left no room for doubt. Then she released my arm, stepped back and turned toward the party. She smiled at a passing guest, waved to one of Nathan's friends, and returned to Nathan's side as if nothing had happened. She slipped her hand into his, laughed at something he said, and tilted her head toward the neighbor who had started telling a story about his grandchildren. I stood motionless, the glass of wine suddenly heavy in my hand. 38 years in investment banking had taught me how to control my expression, how to absorb information without flinching, how to sit across from someone lying to my face and smile as if I believed every word. I used every bit of that training now. I turned back toward the garden, lifted my glass, took a slow sip. My face showed nothing. My posture suggested calm, but my mind was racing. Claire had not panicked. She had not cried. She had not asked me for help in the desperate, unfiltered way people do when they are afraid. She had delivered a tactical instruction. 4 words, no more. Because 4 words were all she could risk without being overheard. She had chosen this moment because the party was crowded. Because Nathan could not see us clearly from where he stood. Because no one would think twice about a daughter hugging her father at her own engagement party. She had chosen me because she trusted me to carry the weight of what she had just asked. And because she could not carry it alone. I stayed another 40 minutes. I moved through the garden, shaking hands, accepting congratulations, asking polite questions about jobs and vacations and children. I spent 10 minutes talking with Nathan about Oregon wine country, about investment strategies for small vineyards, about the challenges of sustaining agriculture in a changing climate. He answered every question smoothly made, thoughtful observations, never hesitated. But I saw something flicker across his face when I asked about his consulting work. A calculation, a moment of adjustment. It was subtle, barely perceptible, the kind of micro-expression you learn to read after decades of negotiating with people who have something to hide. He was wondering if I suspected something, and he was deciding in real time how to manage it. I smiled. I nodded. I complimented his taste in wine. And I filed the observation away. By 9:30, guests began drifting toward their cars. Nathan and Claire stood near the driveway, thanking people as they left, hugging friends, waving goodbye. I stayed on the terrace, watching. Nathan glanced toward me once, raised his glass in a silent toast, and smiled. I raised mine in return. When the last car pulled away, Claire walked Nathan to the guest house. I watched them disappear into the darkness beyond the vineyard, her hand in his, their voices soft and distant. Then I went inside. I locked the door. I climbed the stairs to my office and sat down at the desk, where I had spent the last 5 years managing what remained of my career, sorting through estate planning documents, reviewing investments I no longer cared about. I looked at the photograph on the corner of the desk. Kate smiling in the garden sunlight in her hair, a blanket across her lap. The picture had been taken 6 months before she passed. She looked happy, at peace, as if she had already made her peace with whatever was coming. Trust but verify. Always verify, especially with Claire. For 5 years I had wondered what she meant. I had convinced myself it was about financial decisions, career advice, the ordinary caution any parent exercises when watching their child navigate adulthood. But Kate had seen something I could not. She had known there would come a moment when I would need to verify something even when it broke my heart to do so. That moment had arrived. Tomorrow morning I would call Laura Bennett, the family attorney, who had helped Kate and me structure the Fletcher Family Trust. Then I would call someone else, someone who specialized in finding information people tried to hide. Someone who could verify what my daughter had just told me to investigate. One promise to my daughter. One promise to Kate. And a banker's instinct that had never failed me even when I wished it would. I texted Claire before Nathan woke. The sun had barely broken over the eastern hills, the vineyards still wrapped in the gray wash of early morning. Meet me in the garden, alone. She appeared 5 minutes later, barefoot, a jacket pulled hastily over her pajamas, her hair uncombed. Her face told me everything. She had not slept either. We walked without speaking, moving past the terrace and into the rows of grapevines, following the path toward the far stone wall where the property ended and the forest began. Far enough from the house that no one could overhear. Far enough that if Nathan looked out a window, he would see only two figures walking in the early light, a father and daughter sharing a quiet morning. Claire glanced back toward the guest house twice, checking, making sure. When we reached the wall, she stopped and turned to face me. Her arms were crossed tightly across her chest, her jaw set in the same expression I had seen on Kate's face 100 times. Determined, frightened, ready. "Tell me," I said quietly. She took a breath. Then she began. It happened 3 weeks before the engagement party. 3 weeks. I did the math in my head and felt a sharp, cold anger settle in my chest. She had carried this alone for 3 weeks. Her laptop had been charging in the bedroom. She needed to look something up quickly, something related to work. Nathan was in the shower. His laptop was sitting open on the desk, multiple browser tabs displayed across the screen. She used it without thinking. It was the kind of casual, trusting gesture couples make when they believe they have nothing to hide from each other. One of the tabs was an Excel file. The name caught her attention immediately. CF_estate_liquidity_timeline.xlsx. She opened it, and everything changed. The spreadsheet was detailed in a way that made my skin crawl. Column A listed asset categories: real estate, investment accounts, trust funds, wine collection, personal property, every major asset the Fletcher family held. Column B listed estimated values: 18 million in real estate, 21 million in investment accounts, 3 million in the family trust, 2 million in wine art and other holdings, 42 million total. The numbers were precise. Too precise. Someone had done their homework. Column C outlined transfer mechanisms: trust modification, co-trustee designation, joint account access, legal instruments that would allow someone with the right signatures to move money quickly and quietly. Column D detailed a timeline, a 30-day window, post-marriage, before legal intervention could be initiated. At the top of the file in the header row, 2 letters: CF Claire Fletcher. She heard the shower turn off. She closed the laptop immediately, her hands shaking, her heart pounding so hard she thought Nathan would hear it from the bathroom. When he walked out, towel around his waist, hair still wet, he asked if she had found the restaurant reservation information she was looking for. She told him yes. She smiled. She kissed him. And she went into the bathroom and locked the door and tried not to be sick. For 3 weeks, she looked for an innocent explanation. Maybe he was helping her plan financially for the future. Maybe his lawyer had prepared standard prenuptial documents. Maybe the file belonged to someone else, a client with similar initials, and she had misunderstood. But the timeline column included a phrase that made innocent explanations impossible. Before legal intervention can be initiated. You do not write that phrase if you are planning something above board. She had never discussed inheritance details with Nathan. She had mentioned the family trust in passing once, maybe twice. She had never given him access to financial documents. She had never told him the value of the estate. Yet someone had researched it thoroughly. Someone knew exactly what we owned and exactly how to take it. She wanted to confront him immediately, but she was afraid she was wrong, afraid she was paranoid, afraid she would accuse an innocent man and destroy the relationship over a misunderstanding. Then came the engagement party. She watched me watching Nathan. She saw the careful way I asked questions, the way I observed him when he thought no one was paying attention. And she realized she was not paranoid. She realized I had seen something too. That was when she decided to tell me. "You did the right thing," I said. My voice was steady, but inside I was calculating timelines, assessing risks, running through every banking fraud case I had ever reviewed. "You are not crazy. You saw exactly what you think you saw." She looked at me, her eyes red but dry. "What do we do? Do we confront him?" "No," I said immediately. "Not yet. If he is what I think he is, confronting him without proof will only make him disappear. He will walk away, cover his tracks, and we will never know the full extent of what he planned." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "We need to know who he really is, what he has done before, and we need evidence that will hold up if this goes to court." "So I have to keep pretending," Claire said quietly. It was not a question. "Yes," I said. "I know it is hard, but if he suspects we know, we lose the advantage. He controls the situation as long as he thinks we are still in the dark." Claire nodded slowly. She had been performing for 3 weeks already. She could perform a little longer. "I will call the family attorney this morning," I said. "Then I will find someone who specializes in this kind of investigation. We move carefully. We document everything, and we do not tip our hand until we are ready." She looked back toward the house. Nathan had appeared in the kitchen window, his hair still damp, pouring coffee. He saw us and waved, smiling the same easy, confident smile he had worn the night before. Claire waved back. So did I. 20 minutes after our conversation, Nathan stood at the kitchen window, coffee mug in hand, smiling like a man who had already won. He waved at me through the glass. I waved back. The performance had begun. His performance, yes. But now it was mine too. The only difference was I already knew how this play would end. I waited until Nathan left. 2 hours of breakfast conversation about the party, about wedding plans, about the weather. 2 hours of performance. When his car disappeared down the driveway, I picked up the phone. The first call went to Laura Bennett, the family attorney for 18 years. She had helped Kate and me structure the Fletcher Family Trust, manage estate planning, navigate tax strategies that protected what we had built. She was 52, sharp as anyone I had ever worked with, and she did not waste time on pleasantries when the situation was serious. "Laura," I said when she answered, "I need to understand something about the family trust. A hypothetical scenario." There was a pause. Laura knew me well enough to understand that I never asked hypothetical questions. "Go ahead," she said carefully. I laid it out. Claire gets married. She adds her husband as a co-trustee. How fast could money be moved? Laura was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice had shifted from casual to clinical. "The trust was established 35 years ago. Claire became the sole trustee when she turned 30. You no longer have signing authority. If Claire adds someone as a co-trustee after marriage, and assuming that person has the legal documents, required funds could be transferred within 48 to 72 hours. My chest tightened. That fast? That fast? Laura confirmed. The bank would not flag it. The transactions would appear legitimate because the trustees of record would be executing them. By the time anyone could initiate legal intervention, the money would be gone. Offshore accounts, jurisdictions with no extradition treaties, untraceable. What exactly would they need? I asked. Trust modification forms. Claire's signature on page 7. Co-trustee designation on page 4. Account numbers. The marriage certificate to establish legal standing. 3 pieces of paper, Graham. That is all it takes to liquidate $42 million in 3 days. I told her about the spreadsheet. I told her about Claire's discovery about the timeline column about the phrase before legal intervention can be initiated. Laura did not interrupt. When I finished, she was silent. Then she said very quietly, "I want to hurt him." It was the first time I had ever heard her sound anything other than composed. "I have a contact at the FBI." She continued, her voice steady again. "Financial Crimes Division, Rachel Torres. She is good, she is thorough, but she will need evidence. Real evidence. Not just suspicion." "I am hiring an investigator," I said. "When I have proof, I will call you." "Do it fast," Laura said. "If this man is what you think he is working on a timeline, and you are running out of time." The second call went to Frank Dalton. I had met Frank 15 years earlier during a merger investigation, back when he was still with the FBI as a forensic accountant. He had since left the bureau and built a reputation as one of the best private investigators on the West Coast. Discreet, thorough, expensive, worth every dollar. "Frank," I said when he answered, "I need a full background check, everything." "Who is the target?" I gave him what I had. Nathan Cross, 42 years old, private equity consultant, based in Seattle. Said he grew up on the East Coast, moved west 15 years ago. Never been married. No visible social media presence. Clean on the surface. "What is the timeline?" Frank asked. "How long do you need?" "Thorough 7 to 10 days. Quick and dirty 3 to 4. I need it in 6. Frank hesitated. "That is tight. Hannah, my daughter is marrying him in 10 weeks, I said. She found a spreadsheet on his laptop 6 days ago that outlined a plan to steal $42 million from the family trust. "I need to know who he really is before he signs a marriage certificate." Frank did not hesitate after that. "I will start now. Call you in 6 days. Sooner if I find something critical." Nathan stayed at the estate through Sunday and Monday. It had been planned that way, part of the weekend celebration. I had to maintain the illusion that nothing had changed. Sunday evening, we sat on the terrace talking about wine country economics, about portfolio diversification strategies, about whether the vineyard could be expanded profitably. Nathan asked thoughtful questions, made intelligent observations, played the role of interested son-in-law with the same polish he had shown since the day I met him. At one point, he asked about Kate. "Claire says she was brilliant with investments. I wish I could have known her." I looked at him across the table, this man who had planned to destroy my daughter, and thought you would have targeted her too. Instead, I said, "She would have liked you." Monday. Nathan worked in the living room, his laptop open, his phone beside him. He took several calls outside, walking through the vineyard, his posture tense, his voice low. I watched from the office window. Once he laughed. It was a cold sound, nothing like the warm, easy laugh he used in front of Claire or me. Monday evening, he mentioned honeymoon plans. "We are thinking about Portugal. Lisbon, maybe. Or Porto." I nodded, smiled, said it sounded wonderful. Later, I would learn that Portugal was not a honeymoon destination. It was an exit strategy. He also brought up financial planning. After the wedding, we should review the trust structure. Make sure everything is optimized. "That is Claire's decision," I said evenly. "It is her trust." "Of course," Nathan said smoothly. "I just mean, as her husband, I want to make sure she is protected." The word protected hung in the air like a threat. Tuesday morning. Nathan packed his car, thanked me for my hospitality, hugged me goodbye. His smile was confident. His handshake was firm. He had no idea that I knew. The car disappeared down the driveway. Those 6 days were among the hardest I have ever lived through. Banking taught me patience. It taught me to wait for the right data, the right moment, the right leverage before making a move. But this was different. I was not waiting on market trends or client decisions. I was waiting to find out whether the man my daughter loved was deliberately planning to destroy her. In negotiations, silence is leverage. Whoever shows their hand first loses. I would wait. Nathan did not know that I knew. That was the only advantage I had. Waiting is a kind of violence. In business, I learned how to wait for the right moment, the right price, the right leverage. But business does not crush your chest. It does not wake you at 3 a.m, staring at the ceiling, running through every conversation, every smile your daughter gave to a man who might be planning to destroy her. The first 3 days I conducted my own research. I searched for Nathan Cross online the way any cautious father might. His professional website was clean, polished, appropriately modest. His LinkedIn showed a stable career trajectory, 240 connections, not too many, not too few. He had been quoted twice in Seattle business publications, offering commentary on private equity trends and acquisition strategies. His opinions were measured, intelligent, unremarkable. His presence on other platforms was minimal. A profile on one social media site with 180 friends, mostly professional contacts. Another platform set to private. No red flags, no contradictions, no trail of complaints or angry former associates. That was what worried me. It was too clean, too curated. Real people have messy online histories. They have employment gaps, embarrassing old photos, posts they wish they could delete. Nathan's digital footprint looked like it had been edited and scrubbed until nothing remained but a carefully constructed facade. It was like someone building an identity instead of living one. I searched for variations. Nathan Cross, Seattle financial scandal. Nathan Cross, litigation. Nathan Cross, complaints. Nothing. Not a single result that suggested trouble. I made notes. Everything Nathan had told us about his past was vague enough to sound true, but specific enough not to raise questions. Classic technique. Give people just enough detail to feel satisfied without offering anything they could verify. On the third day, Friday afternoon, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a name I had not seen in months. Marcus Reed. Marcus had been one of my junior analysts 20 years ago. I trained him personally, taught him how to read balance sheets, the way surgeons read x-rays, how to see the story hidden in the numbers. He left 8 years ago to start his own consulting practice. We stayed in touch. He called every few months to check in, ask advice, share a drink when he was in town. "Graham, what?" he said when I answered. "I saw the engagement announcement in the Portland Business Journal online. Congratulations to Claire." "Thank you," I said, "but I need to tell you something." His voice had shifted, careful, tense. The photo of her fiancé, Nathan Cross, I think I know him. Different name. But the face is identical. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. "What name?" "On Andrew Pierce," Marcus said. 2 years ago in Denver, a client of mine was evaluating an investment deal. Pierce was the consultant. Something felt off, so I dug deeper, found inconsistencies in his references, gaps in his employment history. Before I could prove anything, he disappeared. The deal collapsed. My client lost money. "Are you certain it is the same person?" "Mokre, I pulled the photo from my old files," Marcus said. "Same face, same smile, same way of performing?" That is the word I used at the time. He was performing credibility instead of actually having it. That word again, performing. The exact word I had used. "Graham," Marcus continued, "if this is the same man, your daughter is in danger. Not physical danger, but financial. He targets assets. He finds people with money, gains their trust, and disappears with whatever he can access. She is the primary beneficiary of a family trust," I said quietly. "A significant amount." "That is his pattern," Marcus said. "He targets people with family wealth, earns their trust, and vanishes with whatever he can reach." "I already have someone investigating," I said. "Good." Marcus exhaled. "Send me everything you have on Andrew Pierce. I will send it tonight. The next day, Saturday, I told Claire. She drove to the estate in the morning, her face pale, her hands clenched around the steering wheel when she parked. I showed her the photo Marcus had sent. Andrew Pierce, Denver, 2 years ago. Same face, different hair color, different glasses, but unmistakably Nathan. Claire stared at the image, her hand covering her mouth. How many people has he done this to? We do not know yet, I said. But Marcus confirmed what we suspected. This is a pattern. Nathan, or whatever his real name is, has done this before. She looked up at me, pain written across her face. So I was just a target. You are my daughter, I said firmly. You are brilliant, kind, and you had no reason to suspect. This is not your fault. Her expression shifted. Pain hardened into anger. I want him arrested. Now. We do not have enough evidence yet, I said. Marcus could not prove anything in Denver. That is why Frank is investigating. We need his real identity, his history, and evidence that will hold up in court. Without that, Nathan will disappear and find another target. When does Frank call? Claire asked. Monday, I said. 2 more days. Sunday. I spent alone at the estate. I sat in Kate's chair in the library, staring out at the vineyard, and spoke to her the way I had 100 times since she passed. And you knew, did not you? I said quietly. You knew there would come a day when I would need to protect her from someone who looked perfect. That is why you made me promise. I felt her presence stronger than I had in years. Not a ghost. Just a memory so vivid it felt like she was sitting beside me. Monday morning, I woke at 5. I checked my phone. Frank would call today. I walked through the vineyard, following the rows Kate had planted, the Pinot Noir vines she said would produce the best vintage we had ever seen. Frank called at 11. I was standing in the vineyard near the row Kate had planted the year before she passed. I looked at the caller ID. Frank Dalton. I took a deep breath. Everything I thought I knew about my daughter's fiancé was about to change. I did not yet know that Nathan Cross was not the only name. Andrew Pierce was not either. And the truth was far worse than anything I could have imagined. Frank Dalton never wasted words. In 15 years, I had never heard him use 3 words when one would do. So when he called me that Monday morning, and his first sentence was, "Graham, sit down," I knew the truth was worse than anything I had feared. I was standing in the vineyard near the row Kate had planted. I am in the vineyard, I said. Just tell me. His name is not Nathan Cross, Frank said. It is Neil Carmichael, born in Moncton, New Brunswick, 42 years old. There is no Nathan Cross matching his profile anywhere in any database. He created that identity about 3 years ago. My knees gave out. I sat down hard on the dirt between the vines. Keep going. It gets worse, Frank said. 3 years ago in Boston, a man named Raymond Whitman, 68 years old, owner of a medical equipment company. Widower, 1 daughter. Neil approached through the daughter. Same playbook. Dating, romance, trust. He called himself Richard Brennan. Said he was a venture capital consultant. It took 8 months. Neil convinced Raymond to invest $1.8 million into what he called a biotech opportunity. The money was transferred offshore. Neil disappeared. Raymond lost his life savings. The company collapsed. 6 months later, Raymond Whitman took his own life. Medication overdose. He left an apology letter to his daughter. The case was investigated. No Richard Brennan was ever found. The daughter, Allison Whitman, now 28 years old, filed a civil lawsuit. There was no defendant. She became a lawyer because of what happened to her father. She is still quietly hunting him. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. A father had been lost. A real father. A man who could not protect his daughter, who lost everything, who ended his life in despair. There is more, Frank said. 2 years ago in Charleston, Melissa Hartley, 36 years old, daughter of William Hartley, a real estate developer worth $90 million. Neil used the name Nathan Shaw. He met Melissa at a charity gala. Same tactic, same charm, same timeline. They were married 14 months after they met. The same timeline he was following with Claire. The marriage lasted 22 months. Neil gained access to accounts through Melissa. He began transferring money offshore slowly, in amounts small enough not to trigger immediate attention. William Hartley discovered it before the damage became catastrophic. About $400,000 had already been moved. William confronted Neil privately. He paid him $2 million to divorce Melissa, stay silent, and disappear. He wanted to avoid a scandal. The divorce was finalized. Neil vanished. No charges were filed. William Hartley had paid for silence. Frank had spoken to Hartley's attorney. The man said William regretted it every day. Paying Neil off only sent him to the next victim. That next victim was Claire. Denver was real too. Frank continued. Marcus was right. 2 years ago. Andrew Pierce. Same operation. He ran when Marcus started digging. I sat in the dirt, staring at the vines, trying to absorb what I was hearing. 3 confirmed victims. Maybe more. Raymond Whitman gone. Melissa Hartley scarred. And now Claire standing in the crosshairs of a man who had refined his tactics over years. What is his pattern? I asked. Frank laid it out. Multiple identities, each one professionally constructed. He targeted wealthy families specifically through daughters or heirs. He played the long game, 12 to 18 months to build trust. Marriage or deep commitment to establish legal access. Then he moved fast. Theft mechanisms varied. Direct investment fraud, like with Raymond. Indirect access through joint accounts or trust modifications, like he was planning with Claire. The timeline was always the same. Once he had legal standing, he acted within 30 days. Offshore accounts. New identities already prepared. He disappeared before anyone could respond. This is a professional, Frank said. He has been refining this for years. He is extremely good at reading people, finding their vulnerabilities, and playing exactly the role they need. How many victims? I asked. In 6 days, I found 3 confirmed cases and 4 suspected. There may be more. He has been doing this for at least 7 years. I sat in the vineyard feeling sick. I thought about Raymond Whitman, a father who could not save his daughter, who lost everything, who saw no way forward except to end his own pain. That could have been me, if Claire had not found the spreadsheet, if she had not trusted me enough to tell me. What else? I asked. Now I am still digging, Frank said. Tracing shell companies. There is someone working with him, someone handling the legal paperwork, the offshore accounts. He is not doing this alone. An accomplice. It looks that way. Someone with legal or financial expertise. I am tracking them. Find them, I said. Find everyone involved. I walked back into the house. I sat in the office, Kate's photograph on the desk, looking out at the vineyard she had planted. I thought about the timeline. 30 days after the wedding. 30 days to take everything Kate and I had built over 40 years. Everything we wanted to leave for Claire. He was going to steal our legacy and vanish. But he had made one mistake. He underestimated my daughter. She had seen through him. And now I was going to finish what she started. Before I reveal what happened next, type "protect" in the comments, so I know you're still with me. This is where everything starts to connect in ways you won't expect. Quick reminder. The following segment includes creative elements for storytelling purposes. If you'd prefer not to continue, feel free to pause here and explore other content. Laura Bennett called me that afternoon. Graham, there is someone who needs to speak with you. She has been hunting Nathan Cross for 3 years. Her name is Allison Whitman. I was still in the office at 3 o'clock, trying to process everything Frank had told me that morning. My chest felt tight. My hands felt cold. I had spent the last 2 hours thinking about Raymond Whitman, about a father who could not protect his daughter, about a man who had been destroyed by someone my own daughter was about to marry. "Who is she?" I asked, though I already knew. "A lawyer from Boston," Laura said. She saw Claire's engagement announcement in the Portland Business Journal online. She recognized the photo. My heart kicked. "Raymond's daughter." "Yes," Laura said. "She has been tracking the man who destroyed her father for 3 years. She saw Nathan's picture and knew immediately it was him. She wants to talk to you." "Give me her number." I called Allison Whitman immediately. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was young but hardened, the kind of voice that comes from years of carrying grief and turning it into steel. "Mr. Fletcher," she said. "I saw the engagement photo. The man standing next to your daughter. His name is not Nathan Cross." "I know," I said. "His name is Neil Carmichael." There was a long silence. Then she exhaled, and I heard something crack in her voice. "You know his real name, how we could never find it?" "I hired an investigator 6 days ago," I said. "He confirmed it this morning." "Then you know what he did," Allison said quietly. "You know what he is." "Tell me about your father." Another silence. Then she spoke, and I listened. Her father had been a good man. He built a medical equipment company from nothing. 200 employees. After her mother passed, he poured everything into the business and into Allison. 3 years ago, Allison brought someone home. Richard Brennan, venture capital consultant. Her father, lonely and generous, welcomed him. Richard became like a son. Sunday dinners, golf on Saturdays, business advice over coffee. He convinced Raymond to invest in a biotech startup. The documents looked legitimate. The projections were flawless. Raymond invested $1.8 million. 3 months later, the money was gone. Richard was gone. The company could not make payroll. Raymond lost everything: the business, the savings, the reputation he had spent 40 years building. For 6 months, he tried to find Richard Brennan. He hired lawyers, filed reports, contacted every agency he could think of. Nothing. Employees lost their jobs. Raymond lost his house. He could not look his daughter in the eye. He left a letter. Allison said, her voice breaking. He said he was sorry. He said he had failed me. Then he took medication and went to sleep. I closed my eyes. "I am so sorry." "Udin, I was the one who found him," she said. "I came home from law school for the weekend. I found him in his bedroom." "Allison, do not apologize," she said, her voice steady again. "Help me catch him." She told me about the 3 years since. She became a lawyer specializing in financial fraud. She traced every lead she could find about Richard Brennan. She found the fake identities. She found partial matches, places where he had appeared and vanished before anyone could act. In Charleston, she heard about a similar case. A woman named Melissa Hartley scammed by a man named Nathan Shaw. But by the time Allison arrived, the family had already paid him off to avoid a scandal. In Denver, she heard about Andrew Pierce, but he disappeared before she could get there. "I have been 6 months behind him for 3 years, she said. Until now. She saw the engagement announcement last week. She recognized his face immediately. She stared at the photo for an hour, feeling sick. He was holding my daughter's hand. He was smiling like he had already won. It took her a week to figure out how to reach me. She searched public records, found the Fletcher family trust filings, found Laura Bennett's name. "Mr. Fletcher," she said, "this is what I have learned. He never works alone. My investigator said the same thing," I told her. "He found evidence of shell companies. In Boston, someone drafted the investment documents," Allison said. The legal language was extremely professional. In Charleston, someone handled the offshore transactions. In Denver, someone created fake company registrations. He has an accomplice, someone with legal or financial expertise. Maybe a lawyer, maybe a paralegal or accountant. I have not found them yet. My investigator is tracking them, I said. He says he will have more in the next day or two. Hi, when you find them. Allison said, I want to be there. I want to see both of them arrested. You will, I said, I promise. How is your daughter? Angry, I said. Scared. But she is strong. She was the one who found the first evidence. My father did not get that chance, Allison said quietly. Neil destroyed him before he even knew he was a target. Your daughter is smart. She will survive this. She will, I said. And Neil will never do this to anyone else. I guarantee it. The wedding is in 9 weeks, Allison asked. When the rehearsal dinner is in 8, I said. I think that is when we move. I can come to Oregon, Allison said. I want to be there when you take him down. I will let you know, I said. Then I paused. Allison, one more thing. Your father did not fail you. He loved you. He was targeted by a professional criminal. That is not failure. That is being human. Her voice broke. He passed away thinking he had failed me. So then we will tell Neil, I said. When we catch him, we will let him know that the people he destroys are remembered. That night, I sat in the dark office. Raymond's story echoed in my mind. A father trying to protect his daughter, losing everything. A daughter coming home and finding her father gone. That could have been me and Claire, I heard Kate's voice. But you are not Raymond. Claire is not Allison. You still have time, I answered her aloud. I am doing this for Raymond, for Allison, for every family Neil has destroyed. This ends with us. Right here. Frank called Wednesday evening, 2 days after the first bombshell. I was having dinner with Claire at the estate, telling her about Allison when my phone buzzed. Frank's voice was different this time, tighter, more urgent. It's Graham, he said. I found the accomplice, and I found their plan. You need to hear this now. I put the phone on speaker. Go ahead, Frank. Claire is here. Frank did not hesitate. Her name is Vanessa Cole, 46 years old, former paralegal at an estate planning law firm in Calgary, Alberta. She specialized in trust law and estate administration. She left the firm 3 years ago under unclear circumstances. No reference letter. No promotion to partner, even though she had been promised one. What is she doing now? I asked. Officially freelance legal consultant. But she has no actual clients. Her real income comes from a shell company called Cross Coal Consulting Limited, registered in Alberta. Neil is a co-owner under a different name. Claire set down her mug. Her jaw tightened. She has exactly the expertise they need. Yes, Frank said. Trust modifications, offshore accounts, legal filings. She is the one preparing the documents to steal your assets. Then he told us about the emails. Neil had been careless using a personal email account that was not as secure as he thought. Frank had accessed 3 months of correspondence between Neil and Vanessa. He read them to us one by one, and I felt my blood turn cold. The first email was from July. Vanessa wrote to Neil confirming the target. CF Claire Fletcher. Estimated asset value $42 million in liquid assets plus real estate. Trust structure reviewed. She is the sole trustee, has been since age 30. Perfect setup. The second email was from August. Neil wrote to Vanessa. Engagement party scheduled for September. Wedding 10 weeks after that. Timeline is good. Make sure the documents are ready. The third email was from September. Vanessa reported that the trust modification forms were prepared. 2 signature points. Page 4 for co-trustee authority. Page 7 for grantor approval. Once both signatures are obtained, she will submit the transfer request. The fourth email was the most recent, sent last week. Vanessa confirmed the timeline. Saturday, wedding. Friday evening, sign the documents at the rehearsal dinner. Monday morning, submit the transfer request to the banks. Tuesday morning, wire the funds to the account in Lisbon. Tuesday afternoon, fly out. By Wednesday, the money would be dispersed through a network of shell companies. Even if someone discovered the theft, it would be too late. I stared at the phone. How do they get Claire to sign? Vanessa will be at the rehearsal dinner, Frank said. She will present herself as a legal consultant for the event or as a financial expert helping with post-marriage estate planning. Claire will sign because she will think it is routine. Neil will sign as her fiancé. On Monday, the bank will see that the trustee is adding her husband as co-trustee with all the proper documentation, and they will approve the transfer. What about me? I asked. I will notice the money is gone. By Tuesday afternoon, they will be in Portugal, Frank said. The money will be split into dozens of offshore accounts across multiple jurisdictions. Even with FBI involvement, international fraud recovery takes years. They will vanish with $42 million, and you will spend the rest of your life trying to get it back. Claire stood abruptly and walked to the window. I followed, placing my hand on her shoulder. She spoke without turning around, her voice shaking with fury. He was going to marry me on Friday, rob me on Monday, 4 days. 4 days pretending to be my husband. Then gone. No, I said firmly. He will not. Because we know, and we are going to catch him. We need the FBI now, I told Frank. This is international fraud. Conspiracy. Multiple victims. I already talked to Laura, Frank said. She contacted Rachel Torres, FBI Financial Crimes Division. Agent Torres wants to catch them in the act, at the rehearsal dinner, when Vanessa is present with the documents. Claire turned back toward me. She was pacing now, her hands clenched into fists. I was going to walk down an aisle, say vows, let him put a ring on my finger, all while he was planning to steal everything 4 days later. I stepped in front of her, held her shoulders, made her look at me. You have every right to be angry. You loved him. Or you thought you did. But you saw the truth. That spreadsheet. You could have ignored it, but you did not. You saved yourself, Claire, and now we are going to save everyone else he was planning to target after you. She nodded slowly. 8 weeks. The rehearsal dinner is in 8 weeks. Yes, I said. At Cascade Ridge Resort. Vanessa will be there with the documents. The FBI will be there too. We let them think everything is going according to plan. Then we spring the trap. I can do 8 more weeks, Claire said quietly. I can do it if it means watching him get arrested. If it means making sure he never does this to anyone else. You will not be alone, I said. I will be there. Allison will be there. The FBI will be there. And when it is over, he will spend the rest of his life in prison. That night after Claire left, I forwarded everything to Laura and the FBI. I sat in the office staring at the emails Frank had sent, reading the cold, calculated plan to destroy my daughter's life. Vanessa Cole and Neil Carmichael had refined this operation over years. They thought they had 8 more weeks of smooth sailing. They were wrong. Agent Rachel Torres would call tomorrow to coordinate. Allison Whitman was standing by in Boston. My daughter was preparing for an 8-week performance. And somewhere in Seattle, Neil Carmichael was sleeping soundly, believing in a perfect plan. He did not know that the man whose daughter he was targeting had spent 38 years hunting for flaws in deals. And he did not know that the flaw in his own plan was about to destroy him. Rachel Torres called Thursday morning. FBI agent, 20 years in financial crimes. Even she paused when she heard about the emails. "Mr. Fletcher," she said, "we need to move carefully. These two are professionals, but so are we." It was 1 week before the rehearsal dinner. Rachel had spent the previous day reviewing the evidence Frank had compiled. Emails, financial records, victim testimony, shell companies. The pattern was clear. The case was strong. "We can arrest them now," Rachel said. "Conspiracy, wire fraud, identity theft. The charges are solid, but the strongest case is catching them in the act. When the documents are being signed, when there is verbal confirmation of the plan, when both conspirators are present." She laid out her plan. She would be at Cascade Ridge Resort undercover as an assistant to the wedding coordinator. Support agents would wait in a van outside. I would wear a digital recorder hidden in my jacket pocket. The goal was simple. Record Vanessa and Neil discussing the plan before the signatures. Once we had verbal confirmation and the documents were in hand, we would move. When you have a clean recording, Rachel said, "Text me one word, now. We will be inside within 60 seconds. That same afternoon, Frank called with the final pieces. "Graham," he said, "remember Neil's parents, Robert and Susan Cross?" "Yes," I said. "They visited the estate, seemed very convincing." "They are actors," Frank said. "Retired theater performers from Vancouver. Their real names are Robert and Susan Palmer, both 63. Neil paid them $5,000 18 months ago through a payment listed as Palmer Entertainment Services. Robert thought it was a fun weekend gig, playing parents for a friend's family event. He had no idea it was part of a fraud scheme. When I contacted him yesterday, he was horrified. He is willing to testify." I sat down slowly. Even the parents had been fake. Every piece of Nathan Cross's life had been constructed, rehearsed, performed. "There is more," Frank said. "I ran a DNA analysis. Vanessa Cole and Neil Carmichael. I cross-referenced their profiles through public genealogy databases. I waited. They share paternal DNA," Frank said. "They are half-siblings. Same father, different mothers." The room seemed to tilt. "What?" "Their father was Patrick Carmichael, wealthy businessman. Passed away in 2013. Left everything to his wife and 2 legitimate sons. Neil and Vanessa were his illegitimate children. Neither of them was mentioned in the will. They met through DNA matching in 2015. 9 years ago. They bonded over being abandoned by their father's wealthy family. I understood immediately. This was not just about money. This was revenge. They were punishing wealthy families with perfect facades to compensate for what they had been denied. They were targeting families like the one that had abandoned them. "They are not just stealing," I said quietly. "They are punishing people who have what they never had." "It's exactly," Frank said. "Families with money, families with legacy, families that look perfect from the outside. Every target fits the profile." On Friday, 6 days before the rehearsal dinner, Jessica Morrison came to the estate. Claire's best friend since college. She had been helping with wedding preparations. She pulled me aside into the garden away from the house, her face tight with guilt. "Mr. Fletcher," she said, "I need to tell you something. I should have said it months ago." I waited. "I saw things," Jess said. "About Nathan, red flags, the way he used his phone, always stepping away for calls, business trips that were never quite explained, questions about your family, about the estate, about assets, stories that did not line up. I asked Claire once. She said I was being paranoid. So I stopped asking. "You are telling me now," I said. "That takes courage." "I feel like I failed her," Jess said, her voice breaking. "I should have pushed harder. You saw the truth," I told her. "And now you are speaking up. That is what matters." She nodded, wiping her eyes. What can I do? Be there tomorrow night, I said. At the rehearsal dinner. Sit with Claire. She is going to need you when this is over. That afternoon, I drove to Portland and met Rachel Torres in person at the FBI field office. She was in her mid-40s, sharp-eyed, precise in every word. We reviewed the plan one more time. The rehearsal dinner would begin at 7 o'clock Saturday evening. Cascade Ridge Resort. 42 guests. Vanessa Cole would be in room 318, registered under the name of a legal consulting firm. She would present herself as someone there to help with post-marriage estate planning. I would wear the digital recorder in my jacket pocket. If Neil or Vanessa separated from the group, I would follow. I would engage them in conversation. I would get them talking about the plan. When I had a clean recording, I would text Rachel. One word. Now. Do not take unnecessary risks, Rachel said. If they suspect anything, back off. We will move on them regardless. But a recorded confession makes the case airtight. I nodded. Understood. Friday night, the evening before the rehearsal dinner, Claire and I stood in the garden. The same place where she had whispered 4 words to me 8 weeks earlier. The same place where this had all begun. Are you ready? I asked. I have been ready for 8 weeks, Claire said. Her voice was steady, controlled. But I could see the fury beneath it. 8 weeks of pretending I do not know. 8 weeks of letting him touch me, kiss me, tell me he loves me. All of it fake. All of it calculated. Tomorrow night it ends, I said. I want to see his face. Claire said, her voice low and fierce. When he realizes we know. When he understands he picked the wrong family to destroy. You will, I said, I promise. She turned to me, her eyes bright. After this is over, Dad, will you help me learn to trust again? Help me believe that real love actually exists. I pulled her into a hug. Yes, I will. And it does exist. I promise you that too. The rehearsal dinner was 18 hours away. Neil Carmichael would arrive believing his plan was 48 hours from success. Vanessa Cole would bring documents she believed Claire would sign. FBI agents would wait in the shadows, and I would carry a digital recorder in my jacket pocket, waiting for the moment Neil or Vanessa revealed their plan. Waiting for the moment I could text one word. Now. Cascade Ridge Resort sat nestled in the mountains, as if it had grown straight out of the earth. I arrived at noon on Saturday, 6 hours before the rehearsal dinner, and met Frank in the lobby. He handed me a device the size of a car key. Battery lasts 6 hours, he said. It is already running. Everything you hear, the FBI hears. I slipped it into my jacket pocket and felt the weight press against my chest. Right over my heart. By 7 o'clock, the guests had gathered in the private dining room. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the mountains beyond their peaks, dark against a sky turning the color of plum. 42 people filled the room. Friends, family, colleagues, all of them here to celebrate a wedding that would never happen. Fletcher Estate wine was served. The same Pinot Noir Kate had planted years ago. I wondered if she had imagined this moment when she chose that particular varietal, the wine that would be poured at the event, that would save our daughter. Neil arrived at 6:45. He walked straight to Claire, kissed her, held her close. I watched my daughter's face. She did not flinch. She did not pull away. 8 weeks of performance had trained her into something remarkable. She smiled. She touched his face. She played the role perfectly. At 8:30, Neil stood to give a toast. He raised his glass, looked around the room, and smiled that easy, confident smile I had watched him perfect over 18 months. Claire. He said, his voice warm, his eyes locked on hers. You have given me something I never had. A real family. A home. A future. I promise to protect your happiness, your security, and your trust. Always. The room erupted in applause. People raised their glasses. Claire smiled, her hand in his. I sat at my table glass untouched and thought, you are promising to protect what you plan to steal. At 8:50, Neil excused himself. He leaned close to Claire, whispered something about a work call, promised to return in 10 minutes. He kissed her forehead and walked toward the hallway that led to the elevators. I waited exactly 4 minutes, long enough that no one would connect his departure to mine. Then I stood, excused myself to use the restroom, and followed. The recorder was running. Everything I heard, the FBI would hear. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The hallway was silent. Thick carpet, soft lighting. No one in sight. I moved quietly toward room 318 and stopped a few feet from the door. The voices inside were clear. Vanessa spoke first. Her tone was clipped, professional, all business. I have the forms here. Fletcher Family Trust Modification. Claire's signature line is on page 7. Co-trustee authorization, you as her husband, is on page 4. Once both signatures are obtained, I submit the documents to Pacific Trust Bank Monday morning. Total liquid assets, $42 million. Neil's voice, calm, satisfied. Timeline. Monday morning I submit, Vanessa said. By 5 o'clock Monday afternoon, the funds transfer to the intermediary account. By 6 o'clock Tuesday morning, they move to Lisbon. We fly out Tuesday at 2 in the afternoon. By the time anyone realizes what happened on Wednesday, it will be too late. The money will be dispersed through the shell network. Untraceable. What about the old man? Neil asked. Vanessa laughed. Graham Fletcher no longer has signing authority on the trust. Claire is the sole trustee. There is nothing he can do legally. By the time he figures it out, we will be gone. Then Neil's phone buzzed. He answered. Robert. Tell me. I heard the faint voice on the other end. Robert Palmer, the fake father. Final payment received, role completed, heading back to Vancouver tomorrow. Neil laughed, a cold, amused sound. You two played devoted parents perfectly. Oscar-worthy performance. He ended the call. Vanessa spoke again. Once this is done, we disappear. New identities. $42 million to split. Retirement. And after all these years, Neil said quietly, finally, I had everything. The plan, the timeline, the bank, the identities, the acknowledgement of the fake parents. The FBI had heard every word. I pulled out my phone and texted Claire. 3 words. Room 318, now. 90 seconds later, Claire and Jess appeared at the end of the hallway. They moved quickly, silently, and stopped beside me. I held a finger to my lips. The 3 of us stood outside the door, listening. Vanessa was speaking again. After Claire signs tomorrow, we move fast. No hesitation, no second guessing. We have done this before. We know how it works. The difference is, Neil said, this one is personal. Fletcher thought he was so careful. Thought he was watching me. He had no idea. Claire's face went rigid. Fury, pain, betrayal. But beneath it all, determination. She looked at me, her eyes blazing, and nodded once. Do it, Dad. I had everything on the recorder. The FBI had it too. This was the moment. Text, 1 word. Now. Agents would rush in, clean arrest, case closed. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the father in me. The part that wanted to see Neil's face when he realized the truth. When he understood that the man whose daughter he had targeted was standing on the other side of the door holding evidence that would destroy him. Maybe it was 38 years of closing deals. Knowing that the final moment, the unmasking, was as important as the evidence itself. Or maybe it was Kate's voice, clear as it had ever been. He needs to know he is caught. He needs to understand he picked the wrong family. I looked at my daughter standing beside me. 8 weeks of performance were over. 8 weeks of rage were about to be released. She had endured every lie, every touch, every false promise. She had carried the weight of knowing alone for months, and now she was here ready to watch the man who had tried to destroy her learn that he had failed. I knocked on the door. Before that door opens, type truth in the comments to show me you're still here for the climax. What happens next is the moment we've been building toward. Please note, the confrontation ahead includes some dramatized elements for impact. If you'd rather not continue, you're welcome to stop here and find another story that better fits your preference. I sent the text. One word. Now. Within 90 seconds, Agent Rachel Torres appeared at the end of the hallway, Frank Dalton, beside her 2 additional FBI agents flanking them. They moved quickly, silently. Rachel nodded once at me, then gestured toward the door. We entered together. Neil and Vanessa were standing near the desk, documents spread across the surface mid-conversation. They froze when the door opened. Neil turned, his expression shifting from surprise to calculation in a heartbeat. I stepped forward, the recorder still running in my pocket, and looked at the man who had spent 18 months trying to destroy my daughter. "Who are you really?" I asked. For a long moment, Neil said nothing. He looked at me, then at the FBI agents, then at Claire standing in the doorway. His face changed. The easy charm, the polished confidence, the perfect smile, all of it disappeared. What remained was something colder, sharper, angrier. "You want to know who I am?" he said quietly. "Fine. My name is Aaron Pritchard. 15 years ago, I was a junior analyst at your firm." The room went silent. I stared at him, searching my memory. Then it came back. A young man, ambitious, impatient, too eager to prove himself. "You fired me," Aaron said, his voice steady. His eyes locked on mine. "You found out I was using stolen client data to try insider trades. You called me into your office, told me I had violated every principle of the profession, and terminated me on the spot. No reference. No second chance. You destroyed my career before it even started." I remembered now. The investigation, the evidence, the decision. I had done what any responsible banker would do. "You broke the law," I said evenly. "You stole confidential information. I did what was necessary." "You ruined my life," Aaron said, his voice rising. "I could not get another job in finance. No firm would touch me. My mother had invested her savings with me. Small accounts, retirement funds. When I lost everything, she lost everything. 6 months later, she took her own life. Medication overdose. She left a note saying she could not live with the shame. I felt the air leave my lungs. His mother. I had never known. I had never followed up on what happened to Aaron Pritchard after the termination. "So I changed my name," Aaron continued. "Took my father's surname. Carmichael, Patrick Carmichael. The man who abandoned my mother when I was 8 years old. The man who left us with nothing while he built a fortune with his legitimate family. I became Neil Carmichael, and I spent 15 years planning how to make you feel what I felt. How to take everything from you the way you took everything from me." Vanessa stepped forward, her face hard. "We are half-siblings. Same father, different mothers. Patrick left both of us behind. We found each other through DNA matching 9 years ago. We bonded over being thrown away by people who had everything." Aaron looked at Claire. His expression twisted with something close to satisfaction. "Your father destroyed my family. So I decided to destroy his. I was going to marry you, steal everything he built, and disappear. And he would have spent the rest of his life knowing he could not protect you. Just like I could not protect my mother." Rachel Torres stepped forward, her badge raised. "Aaron Pritchard, also known as Neil Carmichael, also known as Nathan Cross. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, identity theft, and attempted grand larceny. Vanessa Cole, you are under arrest as an accomplice to the same charges." 2 agents moved forward with handcuffs. Aaron did not resist. Vanessa said nothing. They were cuffed, read their rights, and led toward the door. Frank collected the evidence, the documents, the laptop, the trust modification forms. The recorder in my pocket had captured everything. It was over, but Aaron turned back as they reached the door. He looked at me, and for a moment the anger in his eyes shifted into something else. Something that looked almost like pity. "You think this ends here?" he said quietly. "You think I did all this alone?" I stepped closer. "What are you talking about? Ask yourself, Graham." Aaron said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "Who gave me your daughter's schedule? Who told me about the engagement party 6 months in advance? Who told me about Kate's death, about the trust, about the exact structure of your assets? I am good, but I am not that good. Someone wanted this to happen. Someone gave me everything I needed." Rachel pulled him toward the hallway. "Move!" Aaron smiled. A cold, thin smile. "You caught me. Congratulations. But you have no idea who is really behind this." Then he was gone, led down the hallway by 2 agents, Vanessa silent beside him. The door closed behind them. I stood in the empty room, staring at the documents Frank was collecting, trying to process what Aaron had just said. Someone wanted this to happen. Someone had given him information he could not have obtained on his own. Claire stepped beside me, her hand on my arm. "Dad, what did he mean?" "I do not know," I said quietly. But even as I spoke, my mind was racing. The engagement party. 6 months in advance. Kate's death. The trust structure. Aaron had known too much. Far too much for someone working from the outside. Rachel returned, her expression grim. "We have them both in custody. They will be transported to the federal holding facility tonight. You did good work, Mr. Fletcher. This case is solid." He said someone gave him the information, I said. Someone inside. Rachel nodded slowly. "We will investigate. If there is an accomplice we have not identified, we will find them." But as I stood there watching Frank seal the evidence, watching Claire try to process everything she had just heard, I felt a cold certainty settle in my chest. Aaron Pritchard had spent 15 years planning revenge. But someone else had helped him. Someone who knew our family. Someone who had access to information that should have been private. And I had no idea who it was. 9:30 that evening, I was back at the estate with Claire when my phone rang. Agent Torres. Her voice was tight controlled, but I heard the urgency beneath it. "Mr. Fletcher," she said. "Neil Carmichael escaped custody." The floor seemed to drop beneath me. "What?" "During transport to the federal holding facility. He attacked the officer and fled into the woods near Cascade Ridge. We have a regional manhunt underway. FBI, Oregon State Police, local sheriffs. But I need you to secure your property. He knows where you live." I looked at Claire sitting across from me, her face pale, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. She had been silent since we left the resort, processing everything she had heard, everything Aaron Pritchard had said. Now her eyes widened. "How long ago?" I asked. 20 minutes. We are deploying resources now. I'm assigning 2 officers to your estate. They will be there within 30 minutes. Lock your doors. Do not go outside. If you see him, call me immediately." I ended the call and turned to Claire. "Neil escaped. The FBI is sending officers. We need to lock down the house." Claire stood, her face suddenly hard. "He is coming here." "We do not know that," I said. But even as I spoke, I knew she was right. Aaron Pritchard had spent 15 years planning revenge. He had been caught, humiliated, exposed. If he was coming anywhere, it was here. We locked every door, every window. The officers arrived 20 minutes later, positioned themselves outside, one at the front gate, one near the back terrace. Claire went upstairs to her old room. I told her to lock the door and stay there until I came for her. Then I sat in the library, lights off, staring out at the vineyard, waiting. The hours crawled past. 10 o'clock, 11. The house was silent except for the hum of the heating system and the occasional creak of old wood settling. I watched the shadows beyond the windows, searching for movement, for any sign that Aaron was out there. At 11:45 I heard it. A faint noise. Not outside. Inside. I stood slowly listening. The sound came again. From below. The wine cellar. I moved quietly down the hall, opened the door to the cellar stairs, and descended. The lights were off. I flipped the switch. The cellar stretched out before me, rows of wine racks lining the walls, the old stone floor cold beneath my feet. At the far end, near the storage room where I kept estate files in a small safe, I saw movement. Aaron Pritchard stepped out from behind the racks. His shirt was torn. His face was scratched, streaked with dirt. His hands were shaking. He looked like a man who had run through miles of forest, with nothing but desperation driving him forward. "Stay back," he said, his voice hoarse. I did not move. "How did you get in?" "Basement window," he said. Old latch, easy to break. I had forgotten about that window. It had been there for 40 years, original to the house, never updated. A gap in the security I had not considered. "The officers are outside," I said. "You will not get out of here." "I do not care," Aaron said, his voice cracking. "You destroyed my life. My mother is gone because of you. I deserve that money. I deserve something." "You deserve prison," I said evenly. "For what you tried to do. For what you did to Raymond Whitman, to Melissa Hartley, to my daughter." "Your daughter," Aaron spat. "Your perfect daughter with her perfect life and her perfect trust fund. You have no idea what it is like to lose everything. To watch your mother give up because she has nothing left. You made choices," I said. "You stole client data. You broke the law. I did what any responsible person would do." "You ruined me," Aaron shouted. He lunged toward the safe, his hands scrabbling at the lock. "I just need the access codes, the account numbers. I can still get out. I can still—" I moved before he could finish. 66 years old or not, I had spent a lifetime staying in shape, walking the vineyard, maintaining the estate. I grabbed his arm, twisted it behind his back, and shoved him hard against the stone wall. He struggled, but desperation had drained his strength. I held him there, my forearm across his shoulders, until I heard footsteps pounding down the stairs. The two officers burst into the cellar, weapons drawn. They pulled Aaron away from me, cuffed his hands behind his back, read him his rights for the second time that night. As they dragged him toward the stairs, Aaron twisted back toward me, his face contorted with rage and something else, something that looked almost like triumph. "You think I am the only one," he shouted. "You think I did this alone? Dr. Brennan paid me $120,000 to destroy you. This was never just about money. This was never just about me. Someone wanted you to suffer, Graham. And they paid me to make it happen." The officers hauled him up the stairs. His voice echoed through the cellar, fading as they dragged him outside into the night, into a vehicle that would take him back to custody. I stood alone in the wine cellar, my hands shaking blood on my shirt from where Aaron's scratches had torn through the fabric. My chest hurt. My head pounded. Dr. Brennan, Kate's attending physician, had been Dr. Richard Brennan. He had signed her death certificate. He had been the one to tell me she was gone. And Aaron Pritchard had just said that Dr. Brennan had paid him $120,000 to destroy me. I heard Kate's voice as clearly as if she were standing beside me. "Trust, but verify. Always verify." I pulled out my phone, my hands still trembling, and typed into the search bar, "Dr. Richard Brennan, Brennan Industries." The results loaded, and I felt the ground shift beneath me one more time. Sunday morning, 6 o'clock. I sat in the library with Frank Dalton and Agent Rachel Torres, surrounded by financial records and hospital documents. trying to piece together the final layer of the conspiracy that had nearly destroyed my family. Frank spoke first. He had spent the night tracing wire transfers following digital trails through shell companies and offshore accounts. What he found was worse than I had imagined. Honor, Brennan Holdings, LLC, Frank said, sliding a printout across the desk. Registered in Delaware. 3 payments to Neil Carmichael over the past 3 years. $50,000 initially, then 2 additional payments of $35,000 each. Total $120,000. I stared at the document. The numbers matched exactly what Aaron Pritchard had said. Dr. Brennan paid me $120,000. Who owns the company? I asked. Patricia Brennan, Frank said. Wife of Thomas Brennan, CEO of Brennan Industries. The name hit me like a physical blow. Brennan Industries. I knew that name. 5 years ago, in 2019, my firm had led a restructuring deal that forced Brennan Industries into bankruptcy. It had been a difficult decision, but the company was insolvent, over-leveraged, bleeding cash. The restructuring had been necessary to protect creditors and employees, but it had cost the Brennan family an estimated $80 million. Dr. Richard Brennan, I said slowly. The physician who signed Kate's death certificate. He is Thomas Brennan's younger brother. Rachel Torres nodded. We confirmed it this morning. Richard Brennan is a cardiologist at the hospital where your wife passed. He had no financial involvement in Brennan Industries. He is a physician, but his brother Thomas lost everything when your firm restructured the company. I felt sick. Kate had been gone for 5 years, and the physician who signed her death certificate was the brother of a man who blamed me for destroying his family's fortune. Did they have access to Kate's medical records? I asked. Rachel's expression was grim. Neil Carmichael accessed hospital records 5 years ago using stolen credentials from a former IT contractor. We have confirmed that, but there is no evidence your wife's passing was anything other than natural. The autopsy, the medical examiner's report, everything points to a ruptured aneurysm. Dr. Richard Brennan did his job. He signed an accurate death certificate. But Neil used those records to study your vulnerabilities, to understand your family, to plan his approach. Thomas Brennan wanted revenge, I said quietly. He lost $80 million, so he hired Neil to destroy me. That is exactly what he did, Frank said. We traced the payments back to Patricia Brennan's personal accounts. She funded the shell company. Thomas coordinated with Neil. They gave him everything he needed. Claire's schedule, information about the engagement party, details about the trust structure. Neil could not have done this alone. The Brennans provided the intelligence. Rachel stood. FBI agents are raiding Brennan Industries headquarters right now. Thomas and Patricia Brennan will be arrested within the hour. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Wire fraud. We have the financial records. We have the payments. We have enough. What about Dr. Richard Brennan? I asked. We questioned him this morning, Rachel said. He had no knowledge of his brother's activities. He cooperated fully. He is devastated. He said he had not spoken to Thomas in over a year because of family disputes over the bankruptcy. He is clear. I nodded slowly. Dr. Richard Brennan was innocent. A physician who had done his job unaware that his brother was using that moment as a weapon. An hour later, I drove to the federal detention facility where Vanessa Cole was being held. Rachel had arranged the visit. I needed to understand the full picture. Vanessa sat across from me in a small, windowless room, her hands cuffed to the table, her face pale but composed. She looked older than 46, harder, like someone who had carried bitterness for so long, it had carved lines into her skin. Why did you do it? I asked. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice flat, emotionless. Our father was Patrick Carmichael. He abandoned my mother when I was 6 years old. Then he abandoned Neil's mother when Neil was 8. Both of our mothers struggled. Mine passed away from health complications when I was 22. She worked 3 jobs. She never had anything. Patrick left us with nothing while he built a fortune with his legitimate family. When he passed in 2013, he left everything to them. Neil and I were not even mentioned in the will. You found each other through DNA testing, I said. 9 years ago, Vanessa said. 2015. We bonded over being thrown away, over watching people who had everything while we had nothing, so we decided to take it. From families like the one that abandoned us. Families with money, with legacy, with perfect lives. You targeted innocent people, I said. Innocent! Vanessa laughed bitterly. Your family had $42 million. Raymond Whitman had millions. The Hartleys had 90 million. They never struggled. They never went without. They never watched their mothers work themselves into the ground for nothing. So you decided to destroy them. We decided to take what we were owed, Vanessa said. Neil hated you for firing him. I hated you because you represented everything we never had. Security, love, legacy. You had it all. And we had nothing. I stood. There was nothing more to say. Vanessa Cole and Aaron Pritchard had spent years building a life around resentment and revenge. They had turned their pain into a weapon and aimed it at anyone who reminded them of what they had lost. As I left the detention center, Agent Torres met me outside. She handed me a single piece of paper, a handwritten note. Thomas Brennan's confession, she said. He wrote it this morning after we arrested him. I unfolded the paper and read. I hired Neil Carmichael to make Graham Fletcher feel the pain of losing everything the way we lost everything. He destroyed my family. I wanted him to know what that felt like. I stood in the parking lot holding the note, staring at Thomas Brennan's handwriting. A man I had never met. A man whose company I had restructured because it was insolvent. A man who had turned that business decision into a personal vendetta and paid someone $120,000 to destroy my daughter's life. I whispered to the empty air, Kate, I am sorry. I should have seen this coming, but she was not there. She had not been there for 5 years, and I had to finish this alone. August 2025, 8 months after the arrests. I stood in the garden where Kate's chair had once been, looking out at the vineyard she had planted the rows of Pinot Noir she had chosen, because she believed they would produce our finest vintage. She had been right. The harvest that summer was the best we had ever seen. The legal outcomes had come in waves between March and July. Neil Carmichael, also known as Aaron Pritchard, was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, and assault on a law enforcement officer. Vanessa Cole received 8 years for conspiracy, fraud, and forgery. Thomas and Patricia Brennan each received 5 years for conspiracy to commit fraud and wire fraud. Dr. Richard Brennan was fully exonerated. He had no knowledge of his brother's schemes and had cooperated completely with investigators. He sent me a private letter in April apologizing for his family's actions, expressing grief over what his brother had done. I wrote back. I told him he bore no responsibility for choices he had not made. In May, Allison Whitman called. She had traveled from Boston to attend Neil's sentencing. She sat in the courtroom and watched the man who had destroyed her father finally face consequences for what he had done. Mr. Fletcher, she said, her voice steady and clear, you gave my father justice. I never thought I would see this day. Raymond Whitman's case had been reopened. Allison received partial restitution from the seized Brennan accounts. It would not bring her father back. But it was something, a recognition that what had been taken mattered, that he had mattered. Your father was a good man, I told her. He loved you, and he would be proud of the person you became. She thanked me. We promised to stay in touch. And I knew that somewhere in some way Raymond Whitman's memory had been honored. Claire's healing had taken 8 months. I watched her move through it in stages, each one harder than the last, each one necessary. The first month she took medical leave from work and stayed at the estate. She attended therapy twice a week. She did not talk much. She walked the vineyard in the mornings, sat in the library in the afternoons, and tried to piece together how she had been so completely deceived. By the second and third months, she was running again. Early mornings through the vineyard trails, pushing herself until the physical exhaustion drowned out the noise in her head. She reconnected with Jessica Morrison and other friends she had pulled away from during the months with Nathan. She began to rebuild what had been fractured. In April, she returned to work part-time. She led a quality improvement project at the hospital, something she had wanted to do for years but had never found the time. She threw herself into it, and slowly, I saw her begin to believe in herself again. In May, she took a solo trip to Vancouver Island. She spent a week hiking, journaling, rediscovering what it meant to be alone without being lonely. When she came back, she looked lighter, more herself. By June, she was working full-time again. And by summer, she had begun dating, carefully, cautiously, but with a quiet confidence I had not seen in a long time. Last week, she brought someone to the estate. His name was Michael, 36 years old, an environmental engineer working on watershed restoration projects in Oregon. He was thoughtful, quiet, genuine, in a way that felt effortless rather than performed. I had asked Frank Dalton quietly to verify his background. Old habits. Frank had called back within a day. Clean record, stable career, no red flags, everything checked out. But more than that, I watched the way Michael listened to Claire. The way he asked questions without trying to steer the answers. The way he laughed at her jokes without trying to outshine her. He had the qualities Neil Carmichael had only pretended to possess. Patience, honesty, humility. Claire caught me watching them during lunch. She smiled, squeezed my hand, and said, "I'm okay, Dad. I really am." And I believed her. I had kept both of Kate's promises. I had stopped working 7 days a week. I retired fully in June, handed over my remaining consulting contracts, and walked away from a career I had built over 38 years. And I had trusted, but verified. I had listened to my instincts, investigated when something felt wrong, and protected my daughter when she needed me most. The lesson was not cynicism, it was discernment. Love and trust are not weaknesses, but they must be protected by vigilance, by paying attention, by refusing to ignore the quiet warnings that instinct provides. Neil Carmichael had destroyed lives. Raymond Whitman, his own mother, Melissa Hartley, and he had tried to destroy Claire. The Brennans had destroyed their own legacy in pursuit of revenge. All of it, every bit of it, because people chose bitterness over healing, retaliation over forgiveness. But we had chosen differently. We had chosen to protect what mattered. And that had made all the difference. That evening, I walked through the vineyard at sunset. The light turned the hills gold, the grapevines deep green, the sky the color of plum. I walked the rows Kate had planted, the Pinot Noir she had chosen, because she believed it would be the best we ever grew. Claire joined me halfway through the walk. She slipped her arm through mine and told me Michael would be coming for dinner next weekend. A family dinner. She wanted me to get to know him better. I smiled. I told her I looked forward to it. And I meant it. This time I would not need to investigate, but I would still pay attention. Because that is what love requires. We reached the spot where Kate's chair had once stood, the place where she used to sit on Sunday mornings with a blanket and a book watching the vineyard grow. I sat down on the stone wall, looked out at the land we had built together, and closed my eyes. I heard her voice one last time. Clear, calm. Kate. You kept your promise, now rest. I opened my eyes. Claire was walking back toward the house, her phone pressed to her ear, laughing at something Michael had said. The light caught her hair, turned it gold, and for a moment she looked exactly like her mother. I whispered to the empty garden. Thank you, Kate. I kept them both. If you've stayed with me through this entire family story, I want to leave you with something my late wife Kate tried to teach me, and something I learned the hard way. God gives us instincts for a reason. That quiet voice that whispers when something feels wrong. Listen to it. I spent months ignoring mine because I didn't want to seem controlling, didn't want to ruin my daughter's happiness. But dad revenge isn't about being paranoid. It's about being present. It's about protecting the people you love without apology. This family story taught me that love and vigilance are not opposites. They are partners. You can trust deeply and still verify carefully. You can welcome people into your life and still pay attention to the details that don't add up. Don't make the mistake I almost made waiting too long to act on what you already know. To every parent watching, your children need you to be both kind and discerning. Dad revenge in the end is simply this: refusing to let someone destroy what you've built, what you've promised to protect. It's not about control, it's about courage. Sometimes dad revenge means standing guard over your family's future, even when the threat wears a perfect smile. And to the Allison Whitmans of the world still searching for justice, your fight matters. Your father's memory matters. Keep going. If this family story resonated with you, please leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. Have you ever had to trust your instincts when everyone else told you to ignore them? Subscribe to this channel for more stories that matter, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Your engagement helps these lessons reach the families who need them most. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. I'm grateful you were here. A final note: this narrative contains fictionalized elements crafted for educational purposes. If this content doesn't suit your preferences, please feel free to explore other stories that better align with your interests.